Dee, in most of the, not most, a lot of the work that we do with people, and not even athletes, but just everyone, is about controlling their blood sugar, right? All about improving metabolic efficiency, using metabolic efficiency training, looking at carbs, fat, protein, putting it together. End of the day, I guess if you were to ask me, what is my goal? It's to optimize blood sugar. And I know you for yourself also. But here's what I get a lot of time from people and athletes are like, okay, but how do I know? Like, how do I know if it's controlled? How do I know if I optimize it? And, there are some subjective things we can look at, right? I mean, some of
Yeah.
the things I say is, well, maybe you don't have that afternoon crash, right? Maybe you don't feel like you need caffeine or sugar in the afternoon or take a nap in the afternoon. I mean, what other subjective things do you tell people like they should feel if they're controlling their blood sugar?
Yeah, I mean, it is thinking of brain function too, like how
Mm,
steady are your thoughts and your
yeah.
concentration and your focus and accomplishing tasks. But yeah, that perception of just general energy. Are you getting those ups and downs or that sluggishness? Like my head's gonna hit the keyboard here at 2
Hmm.
p.m. When and what is it you're feeling that just because I think so much with how busy everyone is, sometimes we just think how you feel is normal. Like, oh, it's normal for me to get crappy tired at 4 p.m.
Hmm.
because I've had a busy day and so just working through that, like, well,
Yeah.
what is normal to you? And is this just your baseline is shifted so much? So I think a lot of those subjective cues, maybe even hunger levels, cravings, right?
Mhm. That's a really good thing you brought up is your norm. Your norm is your norm, and you don't know outside your norm. But maybe it's not the norm. Maybe it's just your norm,
Aha.
right? So
Uh-huh.
this is
Uh-huh.
it's interesting because I think we've all gone through it before. Like I'll have some days in the afternoon, I'm like, oh, probably didn't do a good job of my blood sugar. I mean, aside from sleep and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's a key thing. So, luckily these days we don't have to just assume or maybe depend on that subjective how am I doing with putting my food together to optimize my blood sugar because just a few years ago the advent of continuous glucose monitors hit the scene in full force. I feel like it was like almost a tidal wave. Now it's not new, obviously people with diabetes have been using CGMs for years.
Yeah.
But I feel like once it kind of got released, and it wasn't really released, it was kind of released with some rules, like a short leash kind of a thing. But it was like, oh my gosh, I can use this. Should I use this? What does it do? What does it not do? So today, everyone, we're talking about the pros and cons of using a CGM or continuous glucose monitor. Now, both Dina and I have worn one, so we will share our personal experiences as well as working with many athletes who have also worn one. So,
Mhm.
Dee, is there any other intro things you would like to say before we hop in? Probably, I mean, we'll probably start with the pros first, right?
I
Yeah.
was just wondering, Bob, if we want to point out for those who may not know or they've heard CGM but not quite clear on like what is this thing and how is it different when we do a finger stick? So maybe just
Mhm.
like the device itself, if you want to go over
Yeah.
device wise, what is a CGM?
Yeah, it's a good point. I kind of fly over that because I just assume because I swear it's like a top of conversation every week for me. So I just assume. So I should not do that. So a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, is a sensor that is placed into your body. And okay, just stay with me here because if you don't know what I'm
Oh
talking about,
yeah.
it's not
Whoa.
crazy. It's not like what? It's
Yes.
this like hair, probably thin as a hair needle. And I wouldn't even call it a needle, but it is a needle, with this little sensor on it that gets stuck on the back of your arm, right in your tricep,
Yep.
right? And it sits there. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Dina, I believe that the lifespan is still 2 weeks for these sensors,
Yeah.
right? So you have to
Yep.
change them out every 2 weeks.
Hmm.
But that sensor is actually monitoring, it's a continuous glucose monitor. So it's continually monitoring your glucose levels, right? As opposed to you can get a lancet, which is a little needle device, put it on your finger, on a clean finger, stick your finger, which basically means you're going to take a drop or two of blood out of it, and you're going to put that on a blood sugar meter, or you're going to transfer it into a blood sugar meter, which is going to give you an accurate reading of your blood glucose at that particular time that you do it. That stick is not continuous, it is real time, that one data point.
Good.
Have I done a good job at explaining that?
Yeah. And the CGM device, like that little sensor you put in, typically goes in like arm area, like
Hmm.
the upper arm.
Yep.
And as you just noted, the glucometer, like the finger stick, literally is like, maybe it's your index or ring finger where you're doing that little poke to
Yep.
get blood. So there is a difference in the tissue or the not only just body placement or the body
Hmm.
intervention or the data point that we're getting from, but the blood versus interstitial fluid, which maybe
Right.
we'll wrap into pros cons list.
Yeah, and interest, I mean,
So,
if you were to give me a choice, I'd much rather wear a sensor versus stick my finger, 24 times during a day. I mean, it's just whatever it is. Like
yeah,
the finger stick gets a little bit old, right? Because your
yeah.
fingers get kind of sensitive. All right. So that aside, I should also mention the CGM is linked to some type of app on a phone or a tablet
Oh,
device
good
because you
point.
have to look, you have to see, right, your record of it. Because the glucometer, the finger stick, that actually will tell you real time, like, oh, it's 110. So you'll
Yeah,
see it there, but you can't, like, if you have a sensor in the back of your arm, you can't see it, right? You can't see the
yeah.
result. So you need an app, and there are some associated. I think Dexcom is a popular one, and what is it? Free
Yep,
Libre. Is
yep.
that what it is? So
Mhm.
those come with their own apps, but there are also companies that make software apps to go along with CGMs. And it's not to get confusing, but I just want to put this out first. So, like, if we put the if we put the finger stick aside really quick, and we're just talking about CGMs, the sensor that goes in the back of your upper arm, you can get these sensors, and thus, like from the companies, like from Abbott, those companies have their own app, right? But there's nothing fancy about it. You can see your glucose, you can see the trends. It's usually over 24 hours, but you can't see I mean, you can see what food does to that, but these special software apps usually include food logs, exercise logs, because then they're taking it one step farther and saying, like the one I use, which we'll talk about later, is I inputted my food every day, I inputted my exercise, and it kind of accounts for that, and it shows you your trends, and you're able to
Yeah,
see and kind of have a diary in the same app as the results of your CGM, if that.
yeah. And some of those apps try to coach you
Right,
suggestions
right.
based on your goal. Are we trying to
Exactly.
lower our hemoglobin A1C
Yeah.
or fat or resolve some sort of issue or weight loss, etc.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. And it kind of depends. I guess, we'll probably end with this too, but it kind of depends on what you want to use it for. Like sometimes
Hmm.
these software company apps are fantastic for you. Sometimes people just need to see the results, just the number, right? So it kind
Yeah.
of depends on what you need. Obviously, you'll pay more for these software apps because they're usually a monthly subscription or annual subscription kind of thing, but to each their own, right? They both provide very good data. So let's start with our pros list first, D.
Okay, Bob.
Yeah. Why well, you know what? Maybe before we start that, let's hear about like maybe our initial thoughts when we wore CGMs. Like, what did you think when you wore? Like, what was your experience like?
I'm trying to think of what time of year this was. I guess this was a couple years ago, Bob. I
Hmm.
wasn't training at a high
Hmm.
level, but I was still training for me. I wanted to see not only just day-to-day nutrition, like, oh, it's my breakfast, but I'm not training till midday. Just like
Yeah.
this breakfast I think is that I know is higher protein, etc. Like, what is this doing for my blood sugar? Having that real time kind of CGM continuous feedback, right?
Hmm.
At the time, I was in still perimenopause
Hmm.
years, and you hear so much about blood sugars all over the
Mm.
place. And so, finding out again, as we talked about in previous episodes, what is the experience that I am having, and how
Right.
do I need to adjust nutrition based on data I'm collecting? Um, and so, did you want me to just give some summaries, or was it more
Well,
just
yeah. I mean,
reasons?
was it help? I mean, yeah, I think
Yeah.
we could probably loop in our experiences when we talk about pros and cons
Okay.
too. But like
Hmm.
at the end, was it worth it for
Yeah.
you? Like, was it
Totally.
helpful? Okay.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Mine was a very similar situation. I wore one for a month, and I was actually doing an experiment with sport nutrition products
Oh,
during
yeah.
exercise, but
Yeah.
I used it obviously during my daily nutrition because I was kind of like you. I was like, oh, this is so much fun. I can
I
see what
know.
combination of foods actually, spike my blood sugar, don't spike. And I found out a lot about like, I feel like both of us are pretty knowledgeable in metabolic efficiency training and pairing foods together. Some of them, like I had some curveballs thrown at me with some foods. I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
didn't expect that one, right?
Yeah.
Which is great knowledge. I do have some cons that I'll kind of weave in, but no, overall, like I give my experience an A, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the pros now. What's yours?
All right.
What's your first one, maybe?
I would say awareness factor, just kind
Yes.
of tagging on to what we were talking about, is we can log our food in a tracker or use visual guides to construct our meals, our plates, based on what we know and like, oh, I have macro goals and all of that. But until you have feedback
Mm,
quantitatively, we don't know for sure. So this is just increasing awareness. Again, it is more quantitative in nature, but seeing your own response to food combinations in the context of your own life situation, which could be on a mini scale, like my stress level is so
mm,
high today and I'm eating this meal versus I'm eating this exact same meal and my
mm,
stress level is low. So just seeing for your own self that extra feedback in all the other pieces besides this
mhm.
has X grams of carb and X grams of protein. So I think that's really, really helpful for the
Yeah,
CGM
yeah, I
use.
think that's huge, and even bringing up the stress is I think a good notable thing to think about because a lot of times we don't associate that. It's like if you're stressed and what happens with blood sugar and everything. But my first one is accountability. So I've had a lot of athletes use it, and I tell you what, there's nothing. Listen, keeping a food log is great and fine and everything. But when you have a CGM combined with a food log, oh my gosh, the accountability is amazing. I mean, in reference and kind of piggybacking off of what you said too, with just the awareness, but you're accountable. Like like if I eat whatever, a donut right now, and I watch, in the next few minutes what happens to my blood sugar, you number one are aware, but number two, you are accountable to your actions, right?
Yeah.
So if you see a spike up to, I don't know, 180, 200, milligrams per deciliter in blood sugar after you eat that donut, you know right away, not even for next time, right? This is why I tell my athletes, I'm like, if your blood sugar spikes that high, maybe we should think about putting a protein with it, even like before or during or even after. Like maybe it's a glass of milk, maybe it's a protein shake, maybe it's something to balance that to kind of quell that
Yeah.
response, that high sugar response. So the accountability is amazing. It also will be one of my cons, but it is amazing in holding people accountable.
I think so, Bob. And there's many layers here we could talk on in terms of like the logistics of how we fuel our
Mm,
bodies. Because I think about then not just choice of food, but like what time am I eating
yes.
these kinds of foods? Is this pre-exercise, post-exercise, at midnight after I've been
Hmm.
out all night? What are the times of day where the foods we eat impact what we're wanting to achieve with our own health and performance goals or longevity goals? And so that's kind of a way then just kind of building this picture for ourselves is expanding, thinking about the timing and things that you have brought onto the scene years and years ago, like nutrient timing, nutrition periodization, those pieces.
Absolutely. And along with that too, it's a good transition is I've found it's very beneficial and the pro, it would be helping people fuel for their workouts, fuel appropriately for their workouts, right? So whether it's you're doing fasted training or non-fasted training, whatever, early morning workouts, mid-afternoon, evening workouts, like it actually helps you prepare because if you know what your glucose level is doing before that workout, you can actually, I mean, hopefully you're ahead of the curve, but you can plan for that, right? So if you wake up in the morning, you have low blood sugar and you're like, wow, I have a hit workout to do or whatever, or a 30-minute easy run, you can plan accordingly. So it helps so much with nutrient timing. That is a big, big pro for me, is it helps that pre timing window pre-exercise. Even during, like I played around with it during during runs and bike rides and stuff. And while we don't have major blood sugar fluctuations there, I found it very interesting because I was kind of experimenting with different nutrition products.
Mhm.
And it kind of helped me determine which one my body was more sensitive to in terms of higher blood sugar. I don't want to say spikes, but ebbs and flows, right?
Yeah.
But it also helps with the recovery too, right? Because you can see where your body's at. Then you can, we're all about like timing carbohydrate and protein and a little bit of fat afterwards. But this also helps like give you, well, how much do you need? Like, what does that ratio actually be? Because we have the research, but we don't know how each person's body responds. And this is where the CGM, I think, comes in super handy.
I think another word that's coming into my mind, Bob, is troubleshooting. It's
Yeah.
just how we have like accountability and awareness
Hmm.
and logistics of how we eat and when and all that. But
Yes.
also, like, I'm trying to fix something. I'm not quite sure. Maybe you do know what's going on, but maybe you don't. Like, why am
Yeah.
I so sleepy
Yeah.
after I eat this thing or at this time of the day or this day of the week, whatever it is?
Hmm.
The troubleshooting possibilities that come from having the CGM, especially if you're working with a good tool or a good practitioner, having that feedback and putting all of the things together and integrating it, it gives us so much more to work with. Not necessary in all situations. So that might go into our soon here cons list, but
Yeah.
it definitely allows us to make adjustments, test it, and then see, what further troubleshooting we need to do.
Yeah, that reminds me, I just worked with an athlete, D, and a young female athlete, and it was interesting the conversation we had because she had some bouts of severe fatigue, but almost like passing out, like and dizziness and lightheadedness. And we were talking, and we were talking about hydration first, obviously, and then I said, I feel like part of the puzzle here is also blood sugar regulation, and she's very metabolically efficient, right? But the point was that she shifted. I mean, it's change of seasons, right? So we're seeing warmer temperatures. She's outside more, training more, like longer duration, higher volume. Her schedule at work changed, so the stress level actually went up a little bit. So I was just thinking in the back of my head, she wasn't wearing a CGM, but I'm like, wow, this would be super helpful during this time to maybe not pinpoint it, but to kind of roll into the whole, how does blood sugar actually affect your body during these changes that you have in your
Yeah.
life? So again, it's a great tool for that also. What are their pros? I'm trying to think of other pros. I mean,
Well, I was just thinking back to what I was saying with my experience, touching on it
yeah.
briefly, is like for those going through different life
Mm,
stages, life
yeah.
cycle stages, especially for our women in the perimenopause years or postmenopause, because you hear so much, especially if you're on social media and if you're on to any kind of influencers or fear mongering is
Hmm.
like, if you're going through menopause, you're bound to get insulin resistance. And I'm
Yeah.
I'm making fun, not fun, but I'm like some of the examples.
You're over
It
exaggerating.
it
Yeah.
can happen, but is it happening to you?
Right. Right.
Or some glucose intolerance, so to speak. And so having that, again, there's so much that goes on as we age and then as we go through some hormone change, whether that's like within a menstrual cycle or within perimenopause. So this can be helpful to try and piece apart. Is this
Yeah.
a fueling issue, under or over, or timing issue, or is this all the other things like my sleep's crappy, my stress is high,
Hmm.
and some of the other things that might be popping up on the radar. So I think
Yeah.
for those in those situations, a CGM might be a positive to kind of
Yeah.
sort that out.
And I think sometimes, certainly not all the time, and it's not the majority of the time, but sometimes it could actually be as easy as just controlling your blood sugar. Like some of these things you're
Yeah,
mentioning, like sleep or so, like whatever it is, like I'm like, oh yeah, because I've
yeah,
got instances that I can count with athletes I've worked with where it actually that was the fix, right? Was controlling and optimizing blood sugar through food. And it would
yeah,
have been great to have this tech because it would have shortened our learning curve a lot more, right? But
exactly.
sometimes it is as easy as this.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it sounds like we're moving transitioning into our cons now
There
because
are some cons.
there are some cons. I think the number one obvious is price, right? I
Uh-huh.
mean, I actually don't even know what they cost these days because it's all over the board, number one,
Yeah.
right? And two, it depends on are you going to do a third party software with an app or the company's CGM with their app? So
Right.
and does insurance cover it? Does insurance not cover it? But I don't know. Do you have any idea of the pricing these days?
I haven't looked recently.
Yeah.
No, but I think, yeah, depending if you're just getting the device, maybe that's like 200 bucks versus
Okay.
an app that might be, that might run you 350,
Right,
depending on
right.
how snazzy you want to get.
Yeah.
So it is an investment, but you're right. It's quite a range, and then yeah, insurance coverage
Yeah, or
or
maybe
not.
HSA, FSA.
Yep.
I mean, there are annual subscriptions to these
Oh
software apps
yeah.
too, right? So
Yeah.
you have to factor in. But at the time, at the end of the day, like, listen, like you got one body, at
Yeah.
least right now in our lifetime, right? Um, People are trying to push that envelope a little bit, and like your health, like, can you put a price on your health? I mean, some people do, unfortunately, but it's like if you look at it that way, like this might be like, do you need another pair of shoes? Well, maybe. But, where does that fall into the whole priority list? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's another con?
I was thinking, Bob, the obsession
Oh,
kind of
that's my
piece.
biggest con. Yes. Yes.
Ooh,
Talk about that a little. What are you
well,
talking about?
there are a lot of data that come with the CGM. Like, even
Yes.
if we're just talking not with the full app and all the logging and feedback you might get from the accompanying app that you purchase, but just this is a 24/7 for the
Hmm.
2 week rotation, right? So you're going to get a lot of data points, and depending on how often you scan, how
Yeah.
much you're looking. Like for those who are newer to the nutrition space, like, cool, this sounds awesome. And then you see the charts and the maps and the reports. I guess obsession and overwhelm might come in together. Like I'm kind of overlapping two things, but like there's
Yeah.
so much data. And then if we're trying to chase certain blood sugar
Oh,
targets, or I guess it's not even blood sugar technically, right? But the
yeah. Yeah.
glucose curves,
Right.
some kind of take it to the nth degree. Like, if I get over this glucose level, I'm going to get diabetes. And it's like
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
data point that's one time. And it's like,
Yeah.
this isn't predictive or diagnostic of your whole future. And
Yeah.
so just being careful with the amount of data you get, that you're kind of putting parameters and a framework for what you're looking for, and being careful to not get too buried in it all, nor too obsessed with all of the data, losing sight of what it is we're trying to learn.
Yeah,
uh
my mindset is very important before you wear one
yeah.
of these. Yeah. And
Yeah.
like I can speak to that, D. When I wore mine, I was extremely obsessive. Like after the first couple days, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this is pretty cool. And then it was like game on, right?
Hmm.
What does 1 ounce of cheese and three crackers do versus three grapes and hummus or like whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Like it was bad. Like you talked to my wife when I wore it she's like, "Oh my God, you
Yeah.
gotta stop." Because I was always, here's another thing, I was always looking at my phone, right?
Oh yeah.
Because the app, and I'm like, okay, 15 seconds. Oh, it's not updating. Come on, like refresh. So it was literally like it was a problem, right?
Yeah.
Now, luckily, I was able to step back and say, oh, you know what? I caught myself. I'm like, oh, this is I get it. Like I get what's happening here. But I think that's a real thing that we need to
Yeah.
watch with people with CGMs. Now, I will say also, like you take breaks from it too, right? But if
Right.
you have that personality where like I've worked with some athletes before, D, and I'm like, no, we're not doing the CGM. Nope, like
Yeah.
nope, writing is on the wall. This will not be beneficial for you because of that reason, right?
Yeah.
Because of mindset. However, on the flip side, it's kind of a con and a pro. But I've had actually an athlete who, those wonderful, it has alarms when you go like too low, like when you're sleeping and stuff. And I was talking to her and she's like, man, this alarm keeps on going off when I'm sleeping. So that could be a con because in my mind, I'm like, well, it's disrupting your sleep now, right? But it was actually kind of a pro because it showed her that which I loved about this, this was why I want to bring this up. It actually showed that she actually was restricting a little bit more of
Yeah.
her calories and her energy. So it helped us to kind of develop a better relationship with food. So that con kind of
Yeah.
became a pro, right? So
Yes.
it's all over the place. It's like a slippery slope with these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think along with that, I'm just thinking of one of the times that I saw, like, from a snack that I consumed, Bob.
Mm.
It was like an apple and cheese combo or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was finding like apples were kind of spiking my blood sugar
Oh,
higher than I predicted.
yep.
And then I was like, oh, I can't eat apples ever again.
Oh my
And
gosh.
like
Yeah. So now you're
apples,
shaming food.
apples are quote bad for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And oh, wait a minute. Okay. There's a lot there, right? And so that
There
food
is.
relationship, now we're picking on a food that could have been more a
Hmm.
context thing or what it was paired with, the
Right. Or
amount
the
or something.
quantity of protein that you put with it, right? I did the same
Totally.
thing with grapes. I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, so grapes spike my blood sugar, but in the end, maybe I just didn't have enough protein with it, right? So
Right.
yeah, you have to kind of bring it back to that context.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
else do you think of?
I think a lot of things, a lot of the cons kind of fall into the whole kind of destructive behaviors, if you will, and maybe
Yeah.
outlook to about food in general, and
Okay.
just creating that healthy relationship. I think also just I've actually had this experience with some athletes where maybe the sensor's bad, right? Because you're getting very unlikely readings, and
Oh,
I don't mean
yeah.
when you first put it on, because you first put it on, you get
Yeah.
your trends, your baselines. But I've had this happen every so often. Maybe it's a bad sensor, and that gets in people's heads too. They're like, "Oh my gosh, why is my blood sugar spiking? Or why is it so low?" And I'm like, "Well, we haven't changed it. Like, let's look at everything
Yeah.
again, context." So sometimes we actually have to look at the tech in that maybe, I mean, we know tech fails every so often, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that could be a con. I just feel like I always introduce that to people when they wear them is just kind of expect at it somewhere down the road,
Mm-hmm.
or down the line that maybe that sensor will be bad and you just have to swap it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which reminded me of one other I had written down here is accuracy or like
Yeah.
the time lag thing between the
Mm,
CGM versus the finger stick.
yep.
Uh, I think, and I need to take a fresh look, but I thought I had seen like there could be 10-20% variance
Hmm.
between CGM and the actual blood level
Yep.
of
Yep. You're right. That's
glucose.
what I've heard too.
So we have to keep that in mind and
Yeah.
that delay in time. There's what, 10-15 minutes maybe where that
Hmm.
if you, so those are things to, especially if we're getting a little obsessive, like, this might not
Yes.
be, if we're trying to solve a problem, does it make sense to just verify or validate through a glucometer if we're seeing
Right.
very unusual readings or that are not outliers, but very low or very high? What are we doing with
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
info? And so just thinking like, okay, accuracy ish. It's the trends maybe we're looking for, along
Yeah.
with layering how it is we're feeling
Hmm.
and some of those things. But that
Yeah.
was one, yeah, I thought that could be a con
You
potentially.
know, and I think I feel like we're getting towards the end here. So I would say almost in summary that if you do decide to wear a CGM, wear it for at least 4 weeks minimum, right? Because I feel like you're really not doing a lot of due diligence in tracking baseline and trends yet. And I only say that because a lot of athletes that I've seen kind of give up after 2 to 4 weeks and they're like,
Yeah,
it's not helping, right? And it was something like this, you kind of have to stick with it because
yeah,
it's measuring a biological process, right? And a lot of
yeah.
biological processes actually. So I feel like it's important if you're going to wear it, maybe commit for like 3 to 6 months, right? And then
Hmm.
that's better data that you can use either with yourself in that app or hire a sport dietitian or someone. I think that would be much more likely to have you use that information in your
Yeah,
developmental stage in life versus just, kind of ditching it.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, also, Bob, for us wearing tank tops, I'd say a con is
Oh,
that big sensor sitting right
that's
there on
true,
the
right?
arm. It draws
Yeah.
attention. Maybe that's a pro or a con. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
That could be kind of a badge
always,
of honor, but no, because you have to wear it's a small sensor. It's like maybe what size of a nickel, but you have to put like this patch over
I
it so
know.
nothing takes it like nothing gets it off, right? Rips it off. Yeah. I
Jeez.
didn't think about that one. Yeah. Yeah. That's because I don't wear tank tops that much.
Okay.
And then you can get some really interesting tan lines too on the back of your arm.
Ah, another con.
Right? And then
Jeez.
what about
Okay.
sunscreen? And then what about swimming? And no,
I
you can swim
know.
with them
Yeah.
actually. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But anyways,
What
well,
I would like to know, Dee, is over in our Patreon account, you guys can all head over there, patreon.com/ISN podcast. I'd love to know who is wearing them, who is wearing them, and your experiences would be great. What are your pros and cons? But maybe also I would love to know what brand you're using these days
Mhm.
because there aren't many brands of CGMs, but of this third-party software. If you're using that, listeners,
Yeah.
I'd love to know what you're using because they keep popping up. I just actually heard of another one that kind of gamifies blood sugar. So I'm
Oh,
like,
wow.
that's interesting. I don't know much about
Interesting.
it, but I feel like that might be on one of the cons because now
Yeah.
you're gamifying a lot of, I don't know. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
But I'd
Yeah.
love to hear from our listeners is what I'm saying. So head on over to our Patreon account and we have a free membership. So just sign up and we can kind of engage there. We probably should offer that we do have paid memberships too because we are an unsponsored podcast and we don't take money from companies or corporations because we want to keep kind of an unbiased approach and talk about what we want to talk about when we want to talk about it. So if you want to support us and throw a couple dollars our way per month, that kind of helps us keep this podcast going with all the expenses behind the scenes.
Yes. And we greatly appreciate that consideration and support from you, awesome listeners. So good, Bob. Well, this was very insightful, and I hope everyone got some takeaways from it. And we look forward to having you join us on our next episode.